these ones are, which is good. So I hope you enjoy. Sorry, the mic is actually here. I hope you enjoy. I hope they're not too scary for you guys. And yeah, let's just get started. Also, I thought I would just say, if you can hear like a kind of buzzing noise, like a humming noise, I've got the radiator on because it is so cold, and it does make a little bit of a noise, so I hope it's not too annoying. But I was thinking it could sound like quite eerie and it might add to like the scary effect, so yeah. Number 1. On Halloween night, back when I was in 8th grade, I'm 27 now, my friend Kayla and I were giddy with excitement, messing around and getting dressed up in our costumes. I'm not even going to say what we went as for Halloween, it's too cringy. Anyway, this night was a special night for us girls, because this was going to be the last year for us to go trick-or-treating. We thought that once we became freshmen in high school, trick-or-treating would be too childish for the new, cool high school students to be participating in, so we were all going out, especially with the amount of candy, grabbing pillowcases that we planned to fill entirely. We practically skipped out my front door to begin, in our opinion, the greatest night and holiday of the year. We didn't waste any time going door to door, street to street, that we didn't even realise that hours had passed. Back during this time, the trick-or-treating time was a hell of a lot longer than the 2 to 3 hours it is now. Back then, it just ended when the kids decided to end it. I can remember one year, my sister Kayla and I stayed out till almost 11 PM. Most of the houses would have already stopped answering their doors, but there was always a few houses still willing to pass out candy. I didn't even think to look at the time until I noticed that there were less and less kids each street we came to. So when I looked at my phone, I said to Kayla, "Holy shit, it's 9:30. We should probably be back at my house. We can watch a movie and stuff ourselves with this," proudly lifting up my pillowcase that was at least more than halfway full. We slowly started walking back towards my house, and as we were passing each street, we noticed how eerily quiet it had gotten, seemingly out of nowhere. People were turning off their porch lights, signalling that they were not going to be passing out any more candy. Now, I was a paranoid person back then, and I'm still paranoid to this day, probably even more so now. So when I got that feeling, that chill that runs up your back and your shoulders tense up, something is off, I thought to myself. I look side to side and get an urge to look behind me. I slowly turned my head around over my shoulder, and what I saw nearly made me piss myself. About 4 houses down from us was Michael Myers, or someone dressed up as Michael Myers, should I say, who was slowly walking behind us. But to me, at that time, it might as well have been the real Michael Myers. He stopped, staring back at me, not moving any muscle, just staring. Now this would be creepy to anyone, but this was literally my worst fucking nightmare. My number 1 childhood fear just so happens to be Michael Myers. A little backstory: when I was 4, my mum was busy cleaning the kitchen. As I sat in the living room playing with my toys, with the TV going in the background, the creepy music had caught my attention, so I started glancing up at the movie while playing with my toys. I grew less and less interested in my toys and had my eyes glued to the TV, already starting to grow nervous and scared by just the music alone. You know the part as we started sprinting the rest of the way, but then I feel my legs start to wobble. Oh God, please no, this can't be real, it can't be. I thought to myself, somewhat in denial, that this was actually happening. Could this really be happening? In that moment, I knew I had one goal, and that was to make it to my front door. We sprint up my driveway, both of us practically crashed into my front door, frantically turning the knob. And then my heart dropped. The door was locked. I'm pounding and pounding on the door, screaming for somebody to please hurry and open the door. I look behind me, and there he is, stepping onto the driveway, still heading for us. Where is everybody? Please, Mum, help us. I glance back behind me, and he's gone. I went silent, listening intently for any noise, when all of a sudden, he slowly came around the side of my house, just a few feet away. This means he walked around the left side of my house, through the backyard, and came around the right side of my house. I screamed while practically falling through the door. My mum looked at us like we were insane, and I yelled, "Close the door." Kayla slammed it shut and looks out the window. Where is he? Why did he go? Kayla said, running to look out the front living room windows. Who? What are you talking about? My mum said, looking at me completely confused. Someone was following us. It was someone dressed as Michael Myers. No. No, don't, I yelled as my mum opened the door and stepped outside, peering around the front yard. She stepped out to the driveway. I nervously watched out the screen door. She turned and yelled back to me, "Well, there's no one now. It might have been someone messing with you." This thought did cross my mind. It is Halloween after all, but to think a grown man, I'm assuming, is walking around alone, messing with two young girls. Stalking them for so long is just extremely creepy. I have to say, since I'm older now and have seen the movies at least 10 million times, the stalker guy was 100% spot on with exactly how Michael is in the movies. The walking slowly but gaining on us as fast at the same time. Disappearing and popping out of nowhere. Like I said, it may as well have been the real Michael Myers, but also the fact that this scenario was my number one childhood fear that I've had multiple nightmares about, and even though I'm much older now, reminiscing that night still gives me chills to this day. It's just I can't help but wonder if it was actually a prank gone too far, or if a person had more sinister intentions in store for us. Number 2. I was about 14 years old when my family had just moved to a new town. I was lucky enough to make a fast friend at a new school, and we subsequently made plans to go trick-or-treating together, since it was coming up to Halloween night. Because we were 14 and lived in a fairly safe neighbourhood, my parents told us that we didn't need a chaperone that year. So while everything was going great and we were having fun, getting some solid candy, it was kind of cool just walking around on our own, feeling sort of grown up. We called at one house and this middle-aged man opened the door. He seemed happy to see my new friend and me, so I assumed we were in for some good grade A candy. I don't actually remember what candy he handed out, but I do remember what happened next. He asked us to come inside, which is weird, but we really wanted candy, so I guess we were dumb enough to take the bait. He disappears for a moment, and I kind of assume he was going off to get us some candy, but when he re-emerges, he doesn't have any. Only a camera in his hand. Then he asked if he could take a picture of us, explaining that he liked to take photos of the kids every Halloween because he loved seeing the costumes, how he was something of a collector, at this point even being fairly naive. I got weirded out, yet knew it was best not to upset the man and let him take the picture, and then we could leave. So he takes the photos of us, waits for the Polaroid to come out, then hands us a pen, asking us to sign our names on the back. Me and my friend did as we were told, but although we'd been dumb enough to actually go into this guy's house with him, we weren't dumb enough to sign our actual names. So we wrote fake ones on the back just to satisfy him. Only then were we allowed to leave with the candy he gave us after we signed. I don't know if the guy was an actual child molester or anything, but there was no more run-ins with him, So all through the month of October, I stuck to a various strengthening. So all throughout the month of October, I stuck to a course of various strengthening exercises that were designed to help me build my core and my glutes. It was hard going, and a lot of injuries like mine, there was no way to fix it to get me running properly again. It was a hard road to rehab and disappointment, which left me feeling pretty anxious and depressed, and it all kind of culminated on Halloween of last year, when I went for a run, which left my back pretty messed up. I usually run around a big loop of a local park, which happens to border a lot of housing and neighbourhoods. What's more, the city's council holds a few Halloween events on the park itself, some for kids and some for big kids. So naturally the place is absolutely teeming with nightlife on the evening in question, which made for a particularly interesting Halloween run. But the joy of slaloming around kids dressed in their spooky best was quickly overshadowed by the pain that began to burn in my lower back. It got progressively worse until after a measly 3.1 kilometers, I was forced to stop, limping my way along the outside path of the park, feeling shamelessly defeated. Then right as I'm walking past this group of trick-or-treaters who were apparently old enough to be able to trick some poor off-licence worker into selling them a few bottles of lager each, one of them makes some daft comment. "Look at this dickhead here." This is definitely a British story, I can already tell. One of them says, "Walking like he's crapped his pants." They all burst into juvenile laughter. Now, running usually makes me pretty zen, so any other time I might have just let a comment like that slide. Only that time I'm in absolutely no mood to be spoken to like that. So obviously I clap back, deliberately shoulder barging the copy offender on the way past him and telling him he'll be picking up with his teeth with broken fingers if he keeps up the lip. Look, I'm not some hard case, but I'd had a really shite time that month, and I was really bent up from not being able to run properly. Remember I mentioned how it was good for my mental health? Yeah, that. Well, these kids were like 16 or 17 at the most, just about the right age to put back in their place by someone older than them. Only it turned out I seriously misjudged their level of bravado, especially given the amount of Dutch courage that their bottles of lager had given them. So instead of just taking it on the chin and carrying on walking in the opposite direction, the group of teenagers then turned around and started following. Little side note here, I've seen a lot of Anne-Marie bottles typing out "you what mate" as a funny way to mimic British parlance. I'll admit it is amusing, but when you've got a group of pissed up teenagers following you actually shouting "you what mate," it's not in the least bit amusing. So there I am, getting followed around a dark park on Halloween by a bunch of costumed teenagers who are now intent on kicking my head in, and any potentially deterring witnesses are quickly dwindling. A trio or so of them wouldn't have been a problem, but like I said, there was more than a handful of these little buggers, meaning that if they actually plucked up the balls to do something about it, they could actually do a fair bit of damage. Only there was one big problem. If they did happen to go on the offensive, it wasn't like I was in the condition to be able to actually run away from them. In fact, in that current state, I wasn't in the condition to be able to maintain a steady pace either. They were gaining on me pretty quickly, and as I said, the little copy one was definitely keen to save some face. So I kept ploughing on, just sort of hoping that if they did attack, I'd have caught my breath enough to be able to properly defend myself. Only right when I do start feeling back to my best, the jibes from behind me stop, and when I actually look over my shoulder to see if they're still following me, I don't see a thing. Now I don't want to give those little toe rags too much credit here, but having them just straight up disappear from behind me was legit unnerving. They really did just up and I saw something darting among the trees. It was definitely unnerving, yeah, but I really did just put it down to my imagination. Besides, how psychopathic and predatory would these kids have to be to successfully stalk me through a park like that? They were drunk teenagers, not the offspring of Michael Myers. I thought I was just losing it, but in the end, I ended up wishing that was just the case. Because right as I walked onto the street where I lived to get to my flat and turned up the path, I heard footfalls scrambling behind me. I turned to look behind and my vision just got white. When I come to, I'm lying in the pathway, hearing the sound of glass shattering and teenagers screaming. I tried to look up to see what the hell is going on, but I can't see out of my left eye at all. It felt hot and sticky for a moment. I thought it might be gone altogether. That's when the panic hit me, and I tried to bring myself to my feet, when another blow to my head from a foot or a fist sends me collapsing back onto the gravel. That's what you get, you dickhead. I heard this squeaky little bastard yelp, and now we know where you live. They didn't quite know where I lived. They ended up breaking the window of one of my neighbours, which obviously they weren't too happy about, but they did end up breaking my orbital socket, which kept me in hospital overnight. But since the house I was in had no CCTV, and there were basically no witnesses who could identify the kids in question, they pretty much got away scot-free with it. But honestly, that wasn't even the worst part about it. A skull fracture was bad, sure, but that healed with time. What didn't get better were these kids hanging around outside my flat for months on end, pretty much every night, until the wee small hours of the morning. No matter how often we phoned the police and got them dispersed, there was pretty much nothing they could do about them coming back. And the more we called, the less they were interested in actually doing their jobs. I expected the kids to actually attack me again, but they didn't. They ended up considerably doing more damage to my car once they worked out which one was mine. Not particularly scary, I know. It just ground me down over time though, messing with my sleep and my mental health. Everything just slowly turned to shit after that attack, so I ended up moving out and that solved everything. 4. I don't know if this is going to scare any adult readers here, but as a kid this definitely scared the crap out of me. My dad used to take me and my sister trick-or-treating around our neighbourhood here in Toronto every year when we were kids, being a chaperone so that we didn't get lost or picked on by older kids. He was always good like that, and me and my sister used to share our candy with him when we got home. It was a major dad tax, but we never minded. There's no way I'd have felt safe enough going out on my own on a dark, freezing night, not when I was that age anyway. So this one year we ended up calling at a new neighbour's house on Halloween. They'd only moved in like a week or two ago, and I don't think my parents had any interactions with them, so I imagine Dad thought it would be a good idea to call over that night so we could get some candy while he could say hi to the new arrivals. 2 birds, 1 stone and all of that. But what we didn't know was that these new neighbours were super hardcore Christians and most definitely were not down with the whole spooky Halloween atmosphere. So we knocked on their door, the neighbour lady answers, and we're all like, trick or treat. Pretty much every single household up until that point had reacted wonderfully and told us how cute we looked in our costumes, given us candy and all of that good stuff. But this lady reacts really, really badly and starts telling Dad how irresponsible he is, taking us out on a cold night like that. A little exchange kicks off between her and Dad, who politely defends his reasoning, even making a joke about how he got to eat a little of the candy himself. The lady just stared at him blankly for a second before she starts screaming all this Bible stuff at us. She had this horrible look of pure anger on her face, all twisted up with big furious eyes, and he pointed a long bony finger at us. I couldn't remember exactly what she said, so I spent a little time doing some research so I could pull up some of the exact quotes that came out of her. Like I said, not totally terrifying for adults, and I remember my dad shaking his head and just leading us away from the house, but to me and my sister, all the screaming about instead expose them and give no opportunity to the devil. She screamed that one at us, and my dad took us each by the hand and led us away from the house. The final thing we heard before we got out into the open street was, "Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter." I mean, she carried on screaming stuff at us, following us outside into the street. As I'm guessing, she started ranting at all of the other parents and kids who were out at that night, but I can't really remember what she said after that. I didn't hear over my own sobbing. Dad walked us away until we couldn't hear her anymore, then gave us a big hug to calm us down. I remember asking him if trick-or-treating made us bad people, but he told us no, that there was no harm in a little bit of spooky fun on Halloween, and that God wouldn't be mad at us for visiting our neighbours or sharing candy with strangers. The kind of thing that made people and communities feel closer together, not further apart. The only thing that did push us apart were horrible neighbour ladies who scream scary stuff at kids and get mad at them when they don't deserve it. All that made us feel so much better and calmed us right down. About in time to call at a few more houses before we called it a night, heading home to eat ourselves in diabetes hole in front of A Night Before Christmas, which coincidentally is still one of my favourite movies ever. Years went by, but I never forgot how horrible that neighbour lady was that evening, and me and my sister grew to hate her. You all might be pretty happy to hear that she used to get the trick side of trick-or-treating quite a lot too, and it wasn't unusual for my sister and I to head off to school in the morning on November the 1st to see them pulling toilet paper out of the tree in their front yard. But anyway, that's definitely the scariest thing that ever happened to me out of all of the times I went trick-or-treating during my youth. Maybe that makes me sound a little sheltered, but as I said, I challenge any 11-year-old not to get super creeped out by a lady screaming every Bible verses in their face on a dark, freezing night like that. Number 5. So this isn't my scariest trick-or-treating story. This is the story of the scariest thing to happen to me in my entire life. It's not some dumb story about ghosties or ghoulies or anything supernatural like that. It's something very real and very tangible that left me seriously messed up for a long, long time. My parents arranged counselling sessions for me to help me deal with it, and I can't say those didn't help a little, but what happened that Halloween night has stayed with me for my whole life, and every single year without fail, I think about it a little. Like a lot of suburban neighbourhoods here on the east coast of the US, Halloween decorations have become something of an art form. I remember when decorations used to be confined to just a pumpkin and maybe a few things pinned in the front door, but now it's a whole nother game, with lawns overflowing with orange coloured decor, even the occasional roof being covered in those fake spiderweb things. Things have gotten pretty intense too. Like last year I saw how someone had actually dug up a patch of their own well-preened front lawn to make like a fake grave type thing that had a skeletal hand sticking out of it. It's been that way for a few years now, and it's the key to how my story even happened in the first place. So on the night in question, me and a friend of mine are wandering around the neighbourhood in costume, collecting as much candy as we possibly can carry. We come to this one particular house that's totally decked out in all kinds of Halloween themed decorations. I mean, it was honestly pretty impressive how much effort the family had put into it, and they were so into Halloween that they'd go to such lengths and decorate their home, and there was a decent chance they'd be hella generous with giving out candy too. So me and my buddy start walking up their pathway, all slow, just admiring all the decor that we saw. As we got close to the front door, things got progressively spookier as we went, but nothing could compare to the scene we saw as we got close to the front twitched as he walked over to the mannequin thing and kneels down beside it. He reaches out to touch the face of the thing, and that's when I see how he's got these rubber gloves on too, the kind you use for washing up. I get that he didn't want to get any of the corn syrup blood or whatever it was on his hands, and I start kind of wondering how he's going to get all the stains out of the carpet. I mean, that's real dedication to ruin your own upholstery, all in the name of Halloween decorations. That's when it hits me. We're not looking at Halloween decorations. The body lying on the carpet isn't a mannequin, and it's not corn syrup that's on the walls. It's real blood, a real body. We're not looking at a decorative setup. We're looking at an actual murder scene. My buddy just says one word. Dude, loud enough for the guy inside to hear us. His head spins towards the window, these big tear-stained eyes just focused on the little spot we were peering from, and the sad look in his eyes turned into pure shock and anger. We lock eyes for a moment, and I feel my heart rate go into overdrive, 1,000 terrified thoughts flashing in my mind all at once. Then the man is up on his feet again, storming out of the TV room and towards what I could only guess was the front door. Me and my buddy just sprint back down the path, running as fast as we can, as we hear the front door open behind us. I looked back briefly to see the man, clothes soaked in blood, chasing us out onto the dark street. He was bigger than us, faster than us, and had absolutely no intention of letting us get away to report what we'd seen. I can't even describe the kind of fear I felt, knowing it was only a matter of seconds before he caught up with us, and when he did, we'd probably suffer the same fate as whoever it was, lying on the carpet back at his house. But as luck would have it, the streets were still pretty busy with trick-or-treaters at that hour, and he might have realised that chasing a pair of kids still covered in blood would arouse way too much suspicion. Even if it was Halloween and people might mistake the real blood for fakery, just like we'd have done in the first few minutes of peering through the window. We ran and ran all the way back to my parents' house, where we begged them to call the police. At first my parents figured that our imaginations had just got the better of us, and dismissed our claims that we'd seen an actual murder scene as pure fantasy. In the end, my dad insisted on seeing the scene for himself before calling the cops out, and even the idea of going back there sent me in fits of terrors. He wouldn't take no for an answer. I had horrible visions of the bloodied man just sticking a shotgun through his front door and blowing my dad away so that there'd be no more witnesses. And the whole walk round the murder house, I was absolutely terrified. But as we got closer, we decided to see a bunch of blue flashing lights. It was only then that Dad actually took me seriously, and as we edged around the corner, we saw a bunch of cop cars sitting outside the murder house. He realised I'd been telling the truth. I figure someone who saw him chasing us briefly had the guts to call the police before us, and I thank God what they did, because I don't know I'd even be writing this if we'd actually been able to walk back up that pathway and back towards that house. It was all